Let's explore some other techniques for setting dependencies in Microsoft Project. We've already talked about using the link tool, which you can find under the Task tab. We've talked about being able to type directly into the predecessor column, including, by the way, you can type in lag here as well. For example, if I type in 8fs minus 4 days, you can see that the lag field over here is displayed, or I can type in 8fs plus 4 days. You can see that it waits 4 days. You just have to remember that you have to type in the dependency type. So if I type in 8 or 8 minus 3 days, it's not going to accept that until you actually put in the dependency type. So I've got to type in 8fs minus 3 days for that to work. You can also double click on a task and bring up the task information dialog box and click on the predecessor tab. And let's say that testing QA is the predecessor to develop final product. I can find that in the drop down list here. Choose testing QA. Notice that it types in the finish to start relationship. You can change that here as well. You can type in lag as well. Click OK, and that dependency is set. Another way to set dependencies is the click and drag method, which can be done in the Gantt chart area or in the network diagram. So I can literally click and drag that to the next task. Make sure the link tool pops up. The part about this is that if you're not careful, you can actually move the entire task before you set your link by accident. So it's possible to move the task when you're trying to set that dependency. So maybe this approach isn't the best approach for folks. I'm going to unlink that task. However, I can change my view by clicking on the View tab and going to this network diagram view. And in here, I'll just shrink the timescale here a bit. I can come up here and see the phase 1 design. You can see the network, it's already been set. I'm going to collapse that down, and I'm going to collapse down phase 2. But notice under phase 3, no dependencies have been set. And I can click and drag and start setting my dependencies quite easily in this visually useful view called the network diagram view. And now I've got my dependencies set for this phase. And notice task 2 and task 3 are happening at the same time, but they both have to be done before task 4. And don't forget, you have to link in the milestone. So if I go back to my Gantt chart, you'll see I've set the network up for that particular phase. Don't forget, you have to link in the first task of that phase. Now you can do that from a phase to phase approach. So I can make phase 2 a predecessor to phase 3. But my recommendation is to set your dependencies at the task and phase level whenever possible. So even though I can come down here and type in 7, which is that entire phase, and I'll go to my View tab and click on Zoom Entire Project so you can see the link here, I don't recommend that you take that approach. My recommendation is linking it to the milestone of the task above. Now this milestone doesn't have a predecessor either, so if I want to set that milestone in the network, I can do that by highlighting these two tasks and using my link tool, or I could have typed directly into the predecessor column, or one of the other techniques that we've already talked about. And then I can come down here and type in the predecessor to install, which is development complete, and I'll type in 12. And now I've got my network set, and you can see that I can collapse these down and see that phase 1 design happens and then all the activities and develop, and you can see the network within each phase. So setting dependencies in Microsoft Project has never been easier, and you can use any one of the techniques that I've showed you. And the idea here, or the best practice here, is that every task and milestone should have a predecessor unless it's driven by the start date of the project, like for example gather information. And every task and milestone should have a successor unless it's the last thing in the project, like for example implementation complete. Now I know that sometimes is hard to follow, but it's a good guideline and it's a good best practice to adopt.